I'm Abby.
I'm Allie. We're the Rannick Twins, and this is Oops, I Arted, a part of the Hayden Collins Intelligence Syndicate. And today, we're going to talk about Kurt Vonnegut, and more specifically, the story behind one of his most famous books, Slaughterhouse-Five.
I don't know a lot about Kurt Vonnegut. I've read part of Timequake, but I was really young. I think I was in 6th grade when I started reading it. I was a little too young to understand exactly what was going on. And I think you and I watched Slaughterhouse-Five, or tried to at one point when we were in high school, but once again, it's kind of confusing.
Yeah, so I'd say you're more of the artist and into like painting and sculpting and all that, whereas I'm more into the writing side of the art world. I actually read Timequake this summer by Kurt Vonnegut because I had a lot of time. I had just moved out and I didn't have internet. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, coming back at 20 and sitting down and reading the book, it's definitely worth the time. It's a worthy read.
I'd like to go back and read it for sure.
But anyways, let's jump into Slaughterhouse-Five. We're not talking about Timequake today, even though I want to. Kurt Vonnegut was born November 11th in 1922 in Indianapolis, Indiana. And I don't know much about growing up because that's not what this story is about. But he went to college at Cornell University, and then around 1942 he enlisted into the U.S. Army.
Yeah, I actually was listening to an interview earlier, and he quoted, in Indianapolis he learned how to
walk tough.
Walk tough, because everybody walked tough. And he went back and people were still walking like they were tough.
Yep, that's what you do in Indianapolis, I reckon.
I've never been, but I'd like to get some feedback on that.
Email us at oopsiartedpod@gmail.com for feedback on whether or not you walk tough in Indianapolis. Moving on. So he enlisted into the U.S. Army, and in 1944 he served in Europe, where he fought in the Battle of the Bulge, which I recognize from grade school.
Yeah. You were more of the history buff than I was. The only history I'm interested in is art history. I mean, there is a level of history that goes behind that. But
I've always been a World War II fan and a real nerd for some World War II documentaries. But he was taken prisoner after the Battle of the Bulge, and he was captured and taken to Dresden, Germany.
Wow.
Yeah, so he was actually taken to an abandoned meat locker.
Abandoned, like, no more animals are being slaughtered?
Yeah, it's being used as a prisoner of war camp instead of what its original intended purpose was.
Okay, because when I first heard the story and they were like, he escaped a meat locker, I was like, that's disgusting.
I'm sure it still wasn't very clean there. But anyways, this is a true story, by the way. This is his life experience. So he was in Dresden as a prisoner of war, and he was in Dresden when the Allied forces bombed the city.
Wow.
And he survived, which I'm sure you're wondering how. But he was underground in this meat locker making vitamin supplements.
Wow.
Which I read, and I had to read a couple times, because I was like, what? Okay.
What a choice to...
You're not making ammunition.
Yeah, to use your prisoners of war to make vitamin supplements. Not medicine, not clothes, nothing.
Anything to promote the war effort.
Vitamin supplements. It might have...
Germany had a different agenda back then. It wasn't about the supplements. Anyways, that is basically where the inspiration came from Slaughterhouse-Five. The main character's name is Billy, and he, along with the other POWs, was in the book. It's an abandoned slaughterhouse, and it's Slaughterhouse-Five. That's why it's named Slaughterhouse-Five, and it still takes place in Dresden, Germany. But I also want to talk about the fact that Slaughterhouse-Five is banned in a lot of schools across the nation.
I don't understand banned books.
I have hatred for banned. I'm mad about books being banned.
I'm sure. We had teachers at our school that we'd had banned books week, you know?
Yeah.
And even at, I think, our college, they do banned book week.
Well, Slaughterhouse-Five should be up there on that list. Slaughterhouse-Five is banned in multiple schools, and a lot of states are still campaigning to have it banned. They're still in the process of trying to ban it. And I'm sure you're wondering why. Kurt Vonnegut, a satirical master, a literary genius. He has gone on to create book after book.
Yes.
And we'll talk about how well he has done in his own scale. But the reason that I read time and time again is that I've heard it's anti-Christian, anti-Semitic, anti-American, and a lot of people ask, what is the overall message of this book? What are you trying to get across, Kurt? And his main message is that we are continually making the same mistakes over and over again, and that it doesn't have to be that way.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's much more convoluted than that in the book, obviously. But in one sentence, that's the concept. But I found this really great quote about why the book is banned in a lot of schools, and it's by this guy. His last name is Scroggins, and he's an associate professor from Missouri State. And he says, quote, "This book contains so much profane language, it'd make a sailor blush with shame."
Yeah, I noticed when I read Timequake when I was younger that there was a bit of swearing in it.
Well, he doesn't hold back. What's the point?
Yeah.
And most people pull their writing from experience. At least that's from my experience. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is his grading system. Okay. And this isn't what I originally intended the episode to be on, but I kind of went down a little bit of a rabbit hole on this one.
That's okay.
Because, you start researching a subject and then all of a sudden you're like, they do what now?
Yeah, something stands out. It's kind of interesting that way. Sometimes I'll start with a story that I want to tell on the podcast, and I'll end up finding something more interesting that that I can find more information on as well and cover, I think, a better story.
Yeah, so I found a couple short things. The first one I wanted to talk about was Kurt Vonnegut wrote for Sports Illustrated.
I know where you're going.
And they asked him to write on a horse that had escaped. This horse had escaped during a race. And they wanted him to write a whole article about this. And legend has it, the story goes that they found Kurt Vonnegut's office empty, typewriter with a paper in it that had said, "The horse jumped over the effing fence." And that's all it said.
That is one of my favorite, probably what I know Kurt Vonnegut best for besides Timequake, because I saw that on our bookshelf from a young age.
Yes. But tingling.
Definitely. That was one of the first things that I read about Kurt Vonnegut was
his bout with Sports Illustrated.
Yeah.
It was very short-lived. But the second thing I found was later in his life, he wrote this in Palm Sunday. He graded all of his novels on a school scale from A to F. Obviously, he doesn't give anything an F, though. But he does give himself some modest grades, if I do say so myself. I just thought this was really strange. He literally says, quote, "The report card is chronological, so you can plot my rise and fall on graph paper if you like."
I really appreciate how real Kurt Vonnegut is. Like,
he's very raw
with himself and with other people. I think that it's kind of really interesting. The fact that he mentioned that really makes me feel like he's kind of, it's telling of his personality.
Yeah, he's very introspective. Obviously, he's done a lot of time thinking and dwelling over the success and the rise and fall of his books.
Yeah, I think it's important to pay attention to that as well, especially as a writer that's trying to sell your art and your product to somebody and also feel good about it. Because I think I read a bit of this article, and the person that wrote it mentions that one of the books that Kurt rated lower was actually one of their favorite books.
Yeah, that was Slapstick, and he gave it a D. But the guy that wrote this article on open culture, by the way, very surprised. But Kurt paid a lot of attention to what other people thought of him as well. He paid a lot of attention to how well sales were doing on his books and the reviews. I love Timequake. It's one of my favorite books, but it was one of the last books he released, and a lot of people do not like it, which I find very surprising. But, I mean, I understand if you're looking for a Slaughterhouse-5, why you wouldn't like Timequake as much.
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, I've listened to all kinds of bands, and where they started off really strong, and I really enjoyed a lot of their work, and then later on, it's not what it was, and it's not what I associate their name with anymore. And so when you're getting something that you really like from Kurt, or really anybody, and then they change it a little bit, it's not what you expect from them. But I think it's important to accept that.
It's important to evolve as an artist. It gets boring doing the same thing over and over again. As an artist, as a creative, constantly trying to push myself and trying to take it to the next level and see what works and what doesn't work. And that's truly a creative energy. That's what we're trying to achieve, is some kind of product, but it doesn't have to be the same thing every time.
So tell me, what are the grades on this?
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry. We got a little deep. Anyways, the grades. So he rated Slaughterhouse-5 A+.
Proud of that one.
Cat's Cradle, also an A+. Two of his best-selling books. Mother's Night is up there with an A, as well as God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, neither of which I have read. And then we are hitting the boards with Player Piano with a B. Welcome to the Monkey House, B-. And
I
then,
love how specific.
yes, he's like, down to the minus and plus. And then he goes on to grade a few of his books, Breakfast of Champions, Womp Eaters, Foma, and Granfalloons, and Palm Sunday as C's, and then he finishes off the list with Happy Birthday, Wanda June, and Slapstick with D's. But they're all in chronological order. I read them from, order of A to D. I just love that he's, go ahead. He literally puts the idea in your head to plot it on graph paper. You can plot his rise and fall.
I feel as though he's proud, almost, that he put them in order and then looked at it and was like, there's a correlation.
Before someone else did. Yeah, I love Kurt Vonnegut. I'd love to talk more about him.
You guys should email us with your favorite Kurt Vonnegut books, or if you have any cool facts about your favorite authors, cool stories.
Or if you just want to send us suggestions,
email us at
oopsiartedpod@gmail.com. And we also have a YouTube channel that you can leave comments on if you want to leave a comment on this specific video. You can find it at oopsiarted, and you will see a picture of our beautiful faces smack dab on the thumbnail for you. So you
Every
can just
time.
click on that and hop on over onto our page. Next week, we're going to be talking about
the day that disco died.
All right. We've been holding off on this episode. We've been trying to do it in order.
Yeah.
The day that disco died. All right. I am so looking forward to this.
Me too.
So, I'm Allie.
I'm Abby.
And this has been another episode of Oops, I Arted. See you guys next week.
See ya.